Before I begin the lesson, I want to say a word about that song, if I may. Perhaps some of you, or maybe all of you, already know the story of that song, but it's very, very impressive. John Newton was a slave trader in England, and for some reason or another, I don't know how, but for some reason or another, he married a woman who had a very strong faith. And it was a conflict for John Newton to be married to someone of faith, and at the same time he was a slave trader, and so he got away from the slave trade. But it was very lucrative, and so before very long he got back into it in a big way. He had been just one of the officers on a slave ship, but now he has his own ship. And he was making a lot of money as a slave trader. Some things happened in his life, and he finally decided that that was such a horrible thing for him to be doing that he turned away from it. And he turned to trying to get people who were down and bring them in some way, bring them to faith of some sort. He became one of the best known preachers in the entire city of London. And when he looked back on himself and he saw what he used to be, he wrote this song, Amazing Grace. It's just such a wonderful song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost and now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. And the other verses that he wrote there are so very, very meaningful. Tonight, though, I want to talk to you about being surrounded by opportunities. Perhaps some of you have heard this story before that I want to open with, but I do want to tell this story to you again. Back in the early 1900s or late 1800s, there was a naturalist by the name of Dr. Argosy, who was going to come to London and make a speech. Well, there was a lady, a very poor lady, who worked for her sisters, and the job that her sisters gave her, it almost sounded like the ugly sisters of Cinderella, but the job that they gave her was to peel onions and potatoes, and she was a scullery maid, according to what they said at that time. And by the way, this is a true story. At any rate, she heard that Dr. Argosy was coming to London, and she really wanted to see him and hear him, because even though she had no education herself, she was very interested in that. And so she did. She saved her money up, and she went to hear Dr. Argosy's lecture. And after the lecture was over, she waited until everybody else had left. And then she went to Dr. Argosy, because she was very poorly dressed and all, and she went to Dr. Argosy and spoke to him and told him how much she appreciated that lecture. And then she said something to him that kind of turned the tide and everything. She said to him, "It must be wonderful to have had all of the opportunities that you've had." That caught his attention. And so he turned and he said to her, "What kind of work do you do?" And she said, "I'm just a scullery maid." "What do you do all day as a scullery maid?" "Oh, I peel potatoes, I peel onions, I clean up the house. I just do the menial work around the house." And he said, "Where do you do this?" "I do it back on the back porch." He said, "What is the floor made out of back there where you do your work?" He said, "Oh, it's just an old brick floor." He said, I'll tell you what I want you to do. I want you to take one of these bricks and find out what it's made of, and write me a letter and tell me everything that you've learned about the bricks. And she said, you know, I can't, I don't know anything about bricks. I wouldn't know where to go. Dr. Argosy said, I'm not going to let you leave this hall until you promise me that you'll write me a letter about what you find out about the bricks. And so she agreed to do it. And she went home, and she went back on the back porch, and there was a loose brick there. She picked this brick up and looked at it, and she didn't know what to do with it. But the next day, there was a brick factory not too terribly far from her, and the next day she took the brick and she went to the foreman and she said, tell me what this is. He says, that's a brick. She said, yes, but I mean, what's in it? What is it made out of? And he began telling her something about the bricks. And he said, you can learn a lot about the bricks by going to the library and just doing some reading. So she thought, okay, I got to do that. She started reading about bricks and got very interested in the bricks. And she read one article after another, one book after another, finding out all she could about bricks. And she sat down and wrote Dr. Argosy a 34-page letter about what she had found out about bricks. In just a very short time, she received a letter, and in the letter was a check for the equivalent, the American equivalent, of about $250. And a note that said, I read your resume about bricks. And he said, it was so good that I gave it to a publisher, and he published it in an article, and this was the money that came from it. And then he added a note. He said, what's under the brick? And she went out there, and it's a true story. This is a real story. She went out there and picked up the brick, and there was an ant crawling around under the brick. And so she rushed to the library, and she began reading about ants. And she found out that there are over 700 kinds of ants. 720, if I remember. No, I take that back. That's a mistake. That was something else. I know my notes. But at any rate, she began reading about the ants, and she was going to write Dr. Argosy about the ants. And she worked and worked and worked on this thing, and she learned all about ants. She really became an authority on ants, of all things. Their social customs and all of this sort of thing, you know. She wrote 350 pages about ants, and she sent it to Dr. Argosy. It was later published in a book. This lady found out that it was not just Dr. Argosy who had opportunity, but she found out that opportunity is in a lot of different places that you never supposed that you would find it. That's kind of a long story, I realize, but when we stop and think about our own lives, and we think about our occupation, our profession, the work we are doing or we're going to do that we used to do, and all of the opportunities that other people had that didn't come to me. Opportunities that I wish I could have had, but they never sprang up. And the whole thing that Dr. Argosy was trying to teach this lady, and did very well, was the fact that curiosity is a very, very important thing when you're looking for opportunities. What is it like? How does it work? What can happen to it? How can it be improved? What is something new? I hope you didn't get brought into this, but Do you remember just a matter of a few days ago, Facebook and the selling of the stock in Facebook? When did it start? How did it start? Well, it was started by a student in a dormitory room in college. He had an idea. And so he began developing that idea, and now that young man who is just in his 20s, he's become very, very successful in what he did. Do you have a computer? Most of us have a computer. You ever think about Microsoft? Microsoft started the same way. And somebody says, oh, I've got an Apple computer. Apple started the same way. Steve Jobs started the whole thing of Apple in a garage. Well, there are so many things that we're faced with every day that we don't stop to think about in reference to opportunities for me. We are and have been for some time in a financial recession. Yes, there are a lot of people who are out of work. And there are a lot of people who have become so discouraged that they've quit looking for work. But at the same time, there are a lot of people now who have found out some things that they can do that they didn't know they could do, the things they could develop they didn't know they could develop, and a number of new small businesses have cropped up as a result of this. And some people are better off along that line than they were before. So the evils of a recession has become a blessing for good for those people. No, I'm not trying to say, oh, that a lot of people have done that. No, that isn't true. But you see, a lot of people didn't find out a lot about ants either, or a lot about bricks, did they? But because this young lady was challenged, because somebody said to her, go and find out, she found out, and she saw something that she could do that she didn't know she could do. Well, what hinders us? Our thoughts. The Bible has a great statement that sometimes I like and sometimes I don't like. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And sometimes, that's something I feel good about. And there are times that I say, oh boy, am I that way? It isn't to say we can do anything we want to. There was a time when that was very popular, and books were written, motivational books were written, about, oh, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want. No, you can't. There's one thing for sure. I could not be a musician. I would love to be a musician. I love music. I'll never be a musician. I have a son who is a musician, a professional, and that's great. He knows exactly what he's doing about that thing. I can never be a musician. I can't be, well, as a matter of fact, Metropolitan Opera has never asked me to come sing. I can't do that. I can carry a tune, I can harmonize, but I'm just never going to be as. Don't stop to say, oh, you can be anything you want to be. You can't. You and I all have limitations, but we can be the best that we can be. And we can develop ourselves in a lot of ways that we've never thought about developing ourselves. So, society puts pressure on us. Our peers put pressure on us. Sometimes our parents put pressure on us to become something that maybe we don't want to be, or we don't have the capabilities of being. There are all kinds of pressure. And so what we have to do is to recognize that there is potential for every one of us. Now, I don't want this just to be a speech. I'm not just a speaker, I'm supposed to be a preacher. How does this relate to the Christian life? Well, you stop and think. We're such a small congregation. We're so weak. We have so few people. Opportunities just aren't there, are they? Yeah, the opportunities are there. We're just not seeing them. What did Jesus say? Seek and you'll find. Knock, and it'll be open. Ask, and you'll receive. No, that doesn't work every time, all the time. But the idea is that we have to see. We have to look for. We have to imagine. A fellow who used to teach, he's dead now, but a fellow who used to teach over at Fuller Seminary, Donald McGavran, he wrote a number of books about church growth, particularly in missions. As a matter of fact, that was what the whole thing was. Church growth in mission work. And one of the things that he said in just over and over, I had a course under him, but one of the things he said over and over said, you have to develop church growth eyes. You have to see what the possibilities are. You have to see where the opportunities are. And you have to see beyond that which is superficial. And our trouble is, we're trying to see the valley, and the mountain is sitting right here, and we don't climb the mountain in order to look into the valley. We have to use our imaginations in order to see what the church can be. Church growth eyes. Not just in reference to church growth, but in reference to all of the aspects of congregational life. We have to see what the possibilities are of every member of a congregation. What can that person do? What can that person do that that person doesn't think that he or she can do? Have you ever stopped to think about the opportunities that Jesus faced? They were really bad. They were really bad. He became very discouraged sometimes, and he was just doing such a good job, and then he said something that people didn't like. And well, let's get a little bit more information there. He fed 5,000 people. What a great thing that was. The next day, he went over on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and people were so excited about him, they followed him over there. And Jesus said to him, I know how you came. You didn't come to hear me, you came to get something else to eat. And then he said, now, you need to strive for the food that doesn't perish. And then he began teaching them and everything. And they began arguing. Some of them began arguing with him about this thing. And then when it was over, they left. It wasn't that they left to go home. They left because they were, I don't like what this guy says. He didn't tickle my ears. He didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. And so they turned around and left. And Jesus was very discouraged about this. And he turned to his disciples and he said, well, you going to leave too? And they gave a wonderful answer. They said, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Oh, people go everywhere looking for peace and tranquility, looking for purpose in life, looking for the good things in life and so forth. And is it in parties? Is it in money? Is it in things? Is it in marriage? Is it in divorce? Is it in children? Where is the good life? Where are the enjoyable things? How do I get these things? And the disciples said, Lord, you have the words of eternal life. One of the things about opportunity is that when we find opportunity, we also find obligations, responsibilities. One of the terrible things that's happening in our culture today is the lack of personal responsibility. I can blame Rudy for about anything I want to. You know, I can find some reason to blame somebody else. I can blame my parents. I can blame my neighbors. I can blame my Christian friends. I can blame all kinds of people for all kinds of things. But what I need to do is to sit back and say, hold it, Jack. It's your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of somebody else. When my brother, my older brother, he was the first one to go to college in our family, and that was such a unique thing to me. He was old enough to go to college, and boy, off he went, and all this sort of thing. And he wrote a letter back. I think it was the first letter that he wrote, and he wrote to my mom and dad, and he was talking about, boy, I found out that if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, it just doesn't get done. And then finally in the letter he said, you know, if you don't get your laundry together, it doesn't go out. And I thought that was just about the way of it. And when we don't get our lives together, ain't nothing going to happen, folks. Nothing going to happen of any importance at all, of any endurance at all. And the opportunities can be all around us, and we won't see them. We don't see them sometimes because they're too demanding. There's too much personal responsibility. There's too much discipline. I had a friend in Atlanta. He worked for IBM. He was a graduate of Georgia Tech. And he said, Jack, when I was at Georgia Tech, I had a good friend over there. And he was a very smart man in engineering and all. And he says he got interested in playing golf. And he became so absorbed in his golf that he began skipping classes to go play golf. He wasn't going to be a professional golfer. He just liked golf. And so he surrendered the discipline of the classroom and of attendance and of learning and of a career so he could play golf. And so it really ruined his life, his business life, as a result of that. There are so many illustrations, there's so many ideas that arise out of this whole thing. Stop and think. Jesus did not have opportunity. Jesus made opportunity. He created opportunity. Why? Because he was looking for it. He was finding people. He was challenging them. Why? There was a lady, he was sitting down at Jacob's well one day just resting, and the disciples had gone into the city there to get something to eat and bring it back, and he was sitting down there, and there's a Samaritan woman came up. And the Samaritans and the Jews were really at odds with each other. They didn't like each other at all. And Jesus spoke to her and said, she turned to him and said, why are you, a Jew, speaking to me? I'm a Samaritan. And then Jesus, well, you know, if that had been you or me, it would have been a different situation. We'd have probably had some other answer. But Jesus said to her, I don't know what Jesus was thinking, first of all, but I think I can imagine what he was thinking. This woman says, why do you speak to me? I'm a Samaritan. And Jesus said, well, because I wanted to drink water, that's why. But that's not what he said. In his mind, it seems to me that he was thinking, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity to teach somebody. And so he says, if you knew who you were talking to, you would ask me and I would give you water that never fails. That's an attention getter, isn't it? That's an attention getter. And then from there we have this wonderful, wonderful dialogue that Jesus had with this Samaritan woman. And she was so excited about what he had said that she jumped up and ran into the town And she had brought her water pot out there to fill up. She forgot about them, left them there, and she ran into town and told the people, I want you to come see this guy. He told me everything I have ever done. Well, no, he didn't do that, but that was her excitement about it. Jesus created an opportunity when no opportunity existed. He created something here. I don't know how I can create opportunities for you. You don't know how you can create opportunities for me, but we need to have eyes that see opportunities. And these eyes that see opportunities will come with demands for us, demands on us for discipline. At the grave of Lazarus, Jesus says, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus, this dead man, was raised from the dead. Well, you would think, oh, wow, everybody in town who knows about that now would just be so happy that this wonderful thing has happened. But there was a group of people who wanted to kill Jesus. And that just intensified the thing. And they decided, you know, not only had we better kill Jesus, we better kill Lazarus too, because he's the #1 exhibit of the power of this man. They didn't kill Lazarus, but they did, of course, kill Jesus. Opportunities didn't come to Peter and Paul, but they found them. Peter was arrested and put in jail, and probably I would have said, boy, I better keep my mouth shut. Because they arrested Peter because he had been teaching and preaching about Jesus and so forth, and now he's in jail. And so they turn him loose and they say, okay, we're going to turn you loose, but we don't want you to speak anymore in the name of this man Jesus. And Peter could say, yes, sir. You know, that's probably what some of the rest of it, yes, sir. Why? Because self-preservation is very important to me. No, Peter says, you know, you decide this. Said, should we obey God or obey you, man? Said, we have to speak the things that we saw and heard. Do you and I have that kind of urgency in reference to our salvation, our relationship to Christ? That this is so dynamic, that this is so wonderful, that it's so meaningful, that I just can't contain it. I've got to share it. No, I don't mean that you've got to jam it down somebody's throat. But there was an earnestness to these people that helped them to see what the opportunities were that were all around them. And that's what I mean when I say we are surrounded by opportunity. The Jerusalem church is an interesting church. In the first 12 chapters of the book of Acts, they were persecuted, had all kinds of problems and troubles. Peter was thrown in prison. James was killed by Herod. All kinds of bad things were happening to them. Saul of Tarsus was instrumental in having one of the Christians named Stephen, having him stoned to death. And they were scattered out, except the apostles. The apostles stayed in Jerusalem. But the Christians were scattered out. And then you know what it says? Those who were scattered abroad, what? They went everywhere teaching the gospel. Why'd they do that? It's better to shut up. It's better not to say anything. Why? Well, because you can see all the disturbance that came from Peter and James and all of these people put in jail, and Saul and all the trouble he's causing here. You better just shut up. No, they went everywhere and taught. That's the reason the church grew, is because these people were so intent on the message that they heard of the gospel. So folks, there are opportunities all around us. Now, all of us have a sphere of influence. My sphere of influence is not what yours is. Yours is not what somebody else's is. But you have a sphere of influence. There are people that have confidence in you. They believe in you. They are your friends or your associates. But you have a sphere of influence. And I'm asking, what opportunities do these people present for the gospel? What opportunities do these people present for their business ambitions? Would you rather talk to them about their business ambitions than talk to them about their eternal life? No, again, I'm not trying to say we need to cram things down people's throat. I can't stand that. But we do need to see that sometime people will see Christ living in us, and opportunities will come for us to teach the gospel to those people. Opportunities for the church. Opportunities for us individually. If you are not a Christian tonight, the gospel invitation is extended to you. If you believe in your heart that Jesus is the Son of God and turn away from the sins of your life, be baptized into Christ, He's promised to give you the hope of eternal life. Let's stand and sing.